It's like David S. Pumpkins.
David S. Pumpkins, absolutely. Well, I don't have any pumpkins here. There's snow outside yet. And we are here in the spoiler room. Wasteland Wander'n. We actually, it's very appropriate that we're talking about Damnation Alley tonight from 1977, because it's about someone trying to venture across the wasteland to the end of the wasteland, so to speak. So it's kind of fitting that we're doing this film. But yes, we're talking about Damnation Alley, 1977. Very interesting film, and very excited to talk about it. And I'm very excited to talk about it with this wonderful crew that I have assembled with me tonight. So thank you for venturing downstairs, pulling up a chair, and popping your favorite drink with us. I am drinking Wisconsin Blue.
I'm drinking caffeine.
Hey, well, there you go. It's just caffeine. Joe's just... And with me tonight, my crew members, yes, the man, the myth, the legend himself is back with us. His internet has decided to allow him to stay here so far. Knocking on wood, salt over the shoulder. It's Mr. Joe Randazzo. How you doing, sir?
Hey, everyone, and yeah, it's working.
Hey,
amazingly.
awesome.
Unfortunately, I couldn't talk about Hell Comes to Frogtown last week.
Yeah,
I know. The other one? There was another one a couple weeks ago that I was not able to talk because I just kept losing my internet.
Every other week, I think your internet just like, yeah, no. But we're glad to have you tonight for this.
Glad to be back.
And we have here with us my right-hand man. He keeps coming back for more. It is none other than Mr. Ian Simmons. How you doing, Ian?
I'm doing great. I'm curious to find out why Joe doesn't care for this movie. Spoilers.
I just found it boring.
Boring.
Ooh. Oh, we're good.
How many driving montages does one movie need?
No. It's not the driving montage. It's the slot machine montages. That thing went on for like 3 minutes of screen time.
Well, before we get further into how bored some folks were with it, Ian, why don't you give the synopsis of the film today?
It's weird because there's so many movies that this movie reminded me of, but they all came out after this movie. So we're in another situation where I'm like, how many films ripped off this movie that probably nobody saw? Because they're like, oh no, it's Damnation Alley. What's that? I'm gonna make my own movie called War Games. It opens.
That was the first one that came to mind.
With two guys going, they're in the Air Force. They're going down into the bowels of a military installation to turn their keys. One of them is not Michael Madsen, but one of them is Jan Michael Vincent, who maybe is the Michael Madsen of 1970s. I don't know. But they go down to this basement and they're doing their drills, and all of a sudden, hey, actual nuclear war breaks out. We don't exactly know who started it or why. We just know that by the time the credits we get to those, the world's been blown up. Cut to some time later, and the surviving folks at this military installation are out, running drills in the desert and going to other places looking for resources. And there's giant mutated scorpions wandering the land. It's a dirt bike chase, scorpions, and a dummy. And George Peppard is he's like the senior guy of the two dudes turning the key, and he was going to request a partner transfer because he and the young whippersnapper don't get along. But hey, they end up being partners in nuclear Armageddon together. There's an accident at the installation. Everything gets blown up, and so it's two main guys, and then Paul Winfield, who are left on their own. They kind of drive in these amazingly cool, articulated, armored vehicles across the desert. They find Las Vegas. They pick up a girl in Las Vegas, and they're trying to get to Albany, New York, because there's a radio signal that's coming from there, even though everyone realizes it's an automated radio signal that might just be playing on a loop. It's a sign of hope. So they have to make their way across. Let's see, we've talked about the scorpions. They encounter a horde of flesh-eating cockroaches.
Yes.
The Earth's axis the Earth was so bombarded by nuclear bombs that it was tilted on its axis, causing all sorts of crazy weather conditions. So they have to fight those. They encounter horny rednecks. This movie has everything.
It does.
And Joe, I want to put you on the couch, not in that way, but just to analyze you. How could you be bored watching Damnation Alley? This is one of those movies. Just to finish up my synopsis, this is the type of movie they need to remake, because it's got really dated special effects. It could use some punching up and modernization in terms of its editing and storytelling. But just in terms of the sheer drama, I loved the opening sequence of this movie with the whole nuclear war thing, the fire breaking out, the explosion. It's got some real cool drama and some great horror. That whole thing with the flesh-eating cockroaches sounds ridiculous, but I think about the convenience store scene from The Mist, where they go in there and they encounter all the spiders and are like, oh, we can handle this, but then everything goes to hell very quickly and people are in real danger. Didn't care for the ending, the very ending, and we'll talk about why, but it gets back to my whole problem with this genre of post-apocalyptic movies, especially in the aftermath of nuclear war, which is like, no, you don't have pastures with horses anymore. You've got irradiated, bombed out landscapes that will not be habitable or breathable for 10,000 years at least. But that's my roundup.
But then you don't have a movie if you can't have people in the area for 10,000 years. I have a dislike in general for films that kind of have like this kind of episodic structure to it. I just never liked them for whatever reason. Like, you encounter one thing, you beat it, you move on. You encounter another thing, you beat it, you move on. I never really liked that. And those, I think in general, those bore me. That might be because there are interesting things that happen in the movie. There was a lot of montages that didn't need to be there. And I'm like, this is only 91 minutes, man. We don't need all these montages. As far as the stuff with the rednecks was great. I love Jackie Earle Haley taking out the guy who's holding the French woman hostage, and then going back, and there's no explanation, but I guess what Jan Michael Vincent says to George Peppard is meant to be some kind of signal, because for some reason and I don't know if I missed it earlier in the movie that they have a signal like that.
No, I think it's just like a military thing. Like, if you get in trouble, say, we got to run a B-39 whatever.
Well, you know what it is? It's like the Bowery Boys or the Dead End Kids going, oh yeah, let's do routine 16, and they take out all the bad guys by doing this routine. Maybe it's just that. You don't need to tell us what it is. Just that scene was interesting. The stuff with the roaches was gross, and I am starting to like it more as I'm talking about it more, because it was like, shit, that did gross me out a lot. The scorpions, that was quaint.
The scorpions is the one thing. The scorpions is the one thing I would take out of this movie completely, because they never address it again, and they never really run across any giant irradiated creatures again.
But that seems to be my issue with the movie in general, is that they get through this and then it's never mentioned again. And I think that's my issue with it, is the structure of the story, because it's just, oh, that happened. It feels like it could be 4 half-hour or 3 half-hour episodes of a TV show that just got smushed together. And not even edited, just left it in.
I will say there's a big question that I had at the end of the cockroach episode or segment, because when they're rescuing Jan Michael Vincent and his would-be girlfriend, who I thought they established knew George Peppard when they first got together, but that relationship is never discussed again.
No, I think it's just Jan Michael Vincent mistaken, because she looks happy to see them. She runs up and hugs George Peppard first, and I think he just assumes that they knew each other. But then she hugs
Paul Winfield,
and then and then he's got the line of,
and then
hey,
she shakes then she shakes J. Michael Vincent's hand. I love that. She gives the general a hug. She gives Paul Winfield a hug, but then she shakes Tanner's hand. And I just love that little bit.
Relationships in this movie are all screwy because they're leading you to believe that I don't want to call her just the French lady, Janice. They lead us to believe that Janice and Tanner might get something going on, but at the very end, when they get the radio signal, she's like, if she's a redhead and she's 35, I'll take her. And then Jackie Earle Haley is like, what if she's 65? He's like, I don't care. I'm like, dude, she's sitting right there. But no, the thing about the cockroaches is when the back of the transport vehicle is opened up and they're getting people on board, you can clearly see there are a bunch of these bugs on the inside of that door. So I'm like, okay, when they close the door, they're going to be in there with the bugs. So how are they going to deal with that? But they just don't. Like, they're like, we scraped them off and moved on. I don't know.
Only a few. They scraped them off as it was
like
closing.
20 of them.
They scraped them off as they're closing.
I also love Winfield trying to stomp the cockroach and nothing's happening.
Yeah, because they're armored. They're armored flesh-eating cockroaches. I love it.
Yeah, they're naturally armored because of the apocalypse.
Yeah, and then they've got a taste for blood. And it's so creepy because he gets into the car to seek shelter, and you just realize, no, these things can get in anywhere, and they do. And the last glimpse you see is George Peppard, like, he cracks open the door and he sees Paul Winfield. We get a tiny glimpse of his bloody face, and you're like, oh, that's nasty.
Yeah, it is. And I get what Joe's saying about the episodic kind of nature to it. Maybe it appeals to the role-playing guy in me, because it felt like you're on a role-playing adventure, like Dungeons and Dragons type of thing, only set in the post-apocalyptic, to where you're journeying to this area, and then you're journeying to this area. I did like the fact that what you might expect, the natural progression of the relationship, given tropes usually for this genre, it's never really, I know you said, Ian, it was complicated. I kind of like at the end that it's not just a given that she falls for Tanner at all. And it almost seems like she didn't quite fall for George Peppard's character either. She's just along. They really dance around any type of actual like allusion to romance in this, and I didn't mind that. I kind of like that. I mean, you think about it too, they set you up, because again, in one of the montage scenes, you have this scene where they're driving along and we get a shot of her. This is after the Hillbillies, where she's taking a shower, and the way they shoot it, you're waiting for Tanner, J. Michael Vincent's character, to like knock on the door and then take a shower with her. But he doesn't. He's crashed out on the bed in the back, and I kind of liked that approach. Well,
but the problem is, it's not really an approach, because they tease the relationship between these characters and make it seem like something is happening, and all this peril they're going through is bringing them closer together in a romantic way, and then they just completely ignore all that. It's like the ending of Twisters, where because Steven Spielberg the two main characters were supposed to kiss. They even do the whole thing of he chases after her in the airport because he doesn't want to let her go. And then at the end, the original ending, not to turn this into a Twisters conversation, but they have the big sweeping Hollywood romantic kiss. And executive producer Steven Spielberg came in and said, I don't want him to kiss. And so what do you have? You've got the guy running after the girl in the airport, and they just kind of look at each other. I think that they do that stupid ass like Eskimo like kiss thing where they put their foreheads together. And I'm like, no one has ever done that in the history of mankind except in the movies. Get that shit off my screen. Rant over.
It's like in Face Off, where when John Travolta and his family just all touch each other's faces. And I'm like, who the fuck would ever do that? Yeah, I saw Twisters last year. That was one of the things that bugged me too. But in this case, I don't think what was her name? Was it Jill?
Janice.
Oh, Janice. I get the feeling, because even when we first meet her, and she's talking about her life with like the casino owner, who, it's in, I don't think it's directly stated, but it's implied that she's sleeping with him because, hey, she's a songwriter. She's trying to get her songs to, the major acts that come through town. And hey, baby, sleep with me. I know Frank, and that's kind of the implication. There's just like kind of this thing throughout where it just seems like men just horrendously disappoint her. So I can totally see why she's not going to go for anybody.
Well, I also thought it was hilarious because when she says that, the guy said that he knew Frank Sinatra, you cut to all three of the guys and you're like,
yeah. Yeah, that was great when she said that, and they're all looking at each other's side eye like,
I've used that line myself.
They're like, we know where this is going. And sure enough, she, I just love the fact of how this guy was going to give her her career break and asked her down to the bomb shelter to, provide the favor. And when she did, he was going to back out of the favor, and then the bombs actually dropped. So then they're in the bunker, and the guy couldn't last for like ever, and he just
he had a heart attack. He freaked out.
He had a heart attack. He kept freaking out, and I'm like, see, and that's the thing is that I think that's why I love this movie so much is, and I do, I adore this movie. I watch it every number of years.
So you've seen it before. This was the first time for me.
Oh
Me
yeah,
too.
no, I watched this when this was cable fodder, not when it first came out, obviously, but when it was on cable quite a bit. I used to watch it a lot. Okay. I dug it for the Landmaster, which was really cool, which is great because there's two Landmasters. They only built one Landmaster for $300,000, but the way they shoot it make you believe that there's two Landmasters. So mad props to them being efficient in that respect.
Well, but for me, when that thing drives up onto the beach at the end, I'm like, they actually built this thing. Because throughout the movie, I'm like, is this a model or is this an actual? Because it's very convincing. But
I mean, it was part of it. If you want a little backstory on it, it is a 12-wheeled Landmaster vehicle. It was created by Jeffries Automotive in Universal City, California, and it cost $300,000 to make in 1976. So that was a big deal. It had a
like most of the budget.
Huh?
It's gotta be like most of the budget for this movie.
Well, the budget was $7.5 million, which jumped up according to George Papard, which we'll get into a little later in an interview they did with him about what they did to the film in post-production. But yeah, they built this thing. Plus, then they built a couple different scale models of it. It was so tough, in fact, that it survived a 25-foot jump during the testing with no damage.
Oh wow!
Oh,
they built this sucker with hydraulic rams to affect the turn. And yeah, I mean, this thing is solid. And apparently, it was sold. It was someone had it in their shop, parked in the Mojave Desert a while back, and they sold it to a private collector in 2024. I remember seeing a post on it on social media because someone bought it and actually is working on restoring it.
Oh, nice.
This movie has a bit of a cult following then.
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, like I was joking in our chat, but I mean, J. Michael Vincent, I know him from Airwolf. Okay.
Yeah, most people do.
And most people do, but he had he started off young in his career. So he had been around for a while by the time he gets this role. So he's in, that was Glenn Larson was Airwolf, I think. And so you have him in here, and then you have George Papard, who I knew from later on from the A-Team and Battle Beyond the Stars, which I have the soundtrack for there. So you have those two in there. And then I knew Paul Winfield from Star Trek because I saw all those before I saw Star Trek 2. So I've seen most of those before I actually saw this film on cable. So you got recognizable faces in here, like you said, Jackie
Earle Haley.
Yeah.
Who became, at this point, I saw him on a Planet of the Apes episode that was around this time from the TV series. So he had been around a while too. At this point, he was a big child actor.
Oh yeah, Bad News Bears.
Yeah,
and Breaking Away.
I still haven't seen Breaking Away.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is a great one, dude.
I've heard. Yeah, it's
absolutely great movie.
Yeah, Paul Winfield. I mean, you think about this in Star Trek 2, that guy has like the worst luck with bugs.
He does.
Oh,
He does. But you talked about it in the beginning, Ian, being especially the Gen Xer and growing up during the Cold War, the first 10 minutes of this film where they get into the actual like nuclear war part still disturbed me a little bit today. Not as much as it did back then, but even watching it today, I was kind of shifting in my seats a bit or yesterday, I was like, man, this is still bugging me when and all they're doing, and it's wild. You're right. They do this so well for the budget they shot this on. They are actually very efficient in how they make things, because all you are watching a graphic of these lines coming over that are supposed to represent missiles, and then they launch, and they use stock footage in that for the missile launches, but you see the intercept missiles, and then it says only 40% were intercepted, and then it starts just reading off the names. We don't actually see what happens at first until they show stock footage of the mushroom clouds later, but until then you get that full minute where the computer's just reading off the names of cities that are getting hit. And I'm just like, okay, this is chilling for me right now.
Yeah, I just a couple months ago finished reading a book about nuclear war, and it's like a minute by minute scenario of what would happen today, not in the 1970s, although not a whole lot has changed, except that they're deadlier. But yeah, they talked about like all these missile defense systems that people like to tout, like, oh, we can shoot down nuclear bombs. No, you can't. In fact, that whole thing about like 40% hit rate is largely nonsense. Someone described it in the book, I think, as trying to shoot a bullet with a bullet. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's so watching the first opening part, and that's what I think I dig about this film, is because it doesn't dive into right away into the wasteland like some of the other wasteland films we've watched, where you get the little introduction saying, hey, this happened, bombs dropped, okay, world's in chaos. No, we actually see the before. Not only that, but our two main characters are two guys who helped try to launch the interceptor missiles. They were Air Force, and they're actually at the control panel doing the dual key turn and the whole 9 yards. And then those are the guys we're following later. I'm like, yeah, for the type of film it is, they do, I think, a lot of interesting things that, like you both alluded to, we've seen later on in other films that do it a little more sharply, but you can see a number of things in here to where you're like, yeah, I bet this film influenced.
I mean, even I cannot think of what the movie is. The idea of traveling to try to find the lone radio signal. That's probably been used in like 100 movies since this. And I'm struggling right now to think of which one I'm thinking of in particular. But I'm pretty sure.
Night of the Comet,
George Romero Dead movies, I think, did it.
Yep, one of the George Romero Dead movies, I think, did it. And then you also even had it in Night of the Comet, kind of. It wasn't the primary thing, but it was one of the things that motivated them. They had a radio signal, and so they went to the radio station because they thought a DJ was playing there, and it wasn't. It was a tape recording. But yeah, I mean, that's a theme that comes up later on, especially.
It comes up in a lot of movies. Yeah.
Yeah, where they're following the radio signal, or you get survivors in this wasteland. Not many. And that's what I kind of like too, is we don't have nearly as many survivors in this, at least in the irradiated zone, or whatnot.
Until you find out the whole fucking city of Albany, apparently.
Except Albany, most of Albany survived. But hey,
which again, New York, it's not going to be one bomb. It's going to be like several. And so like the idea of New York State being anything with like a crowd of let me ask you this, guys. How long has passed between the time the bombs fall and like our main adventure? Because it seems like 3 weeks later, but because no one's like hair's grown out that much. I mean, it might be a couple months because Jan Michael Vincent has a bit of a mane, but George Peppard still has his J. Jonah Jameson thing going on,
and his porn stash.
I was gonna say Dabney Coleman.
Dabney Coleman would have been awesome in this part. I love George Peppard, but man, yeah. Oh.
I mean, he cosplayed as Dabney Coleman for some reason in this movie.
But yeah,
well,
how long? What
don't know,
time
they
frame?
don't
was
say.
that?
It was mentioned at one point. I think it's in the scene. I think it's in the scene with the rednecks or with the kid when they first run across him. I think it's 2 years, they said. I think they mentioned something along the lines of like it's 2 years or something for the amount of time that had passed. They mentioned 2 years. It had been 2 years. I remember them mentioning something. I don't know if it was 2 years since they've seen a human or what, but that is dropped briefly, but not you'll miss it if you're not paying attention.
Well,
I
the
remember with
hillbillies,
the kid, they said that his dad died like 4 moons ago, which I don't know exactly what that's supposed to mean, but yeah, I don't know. It's just whatever amount of time there was, it didn't seem like enough time for the air to be breathable to the extent that it is here. They're all just like walking around out in the desert, and also for these giant irradiated scorpions. That's like something that feels like, unless there was a secret Ninja Turtle science lab like right next door in the desert where they were, like this is the thing that takes place over the course of like thousands, if not millions of years. So I was just totally confused.
Just remember, 15 years earlier, the Three Stooges went into orbit and didn't need helmets. So
yeah,
we weren't great with the science.
The science.
But I believe that no matter what year it is, those guys were amazing.
The science here isn't straight, but in all honesty, they didn't really hold more truer accuracy to nuclear warfare of any kind till closer to the 80s. In the 70s of that, when they were making these, it wasn't quite, they weren't going for that. Whereas later on,
in the Omega Man, which came out like 5 years before this, Charlton Heston is out and about in LA after a nuclear war in a couple of weeks, a couple of months.
Right. Right. So,
the smog protected him from all the fallout. That's what it was.
There you go.
They should have put that in there.
What I like about with this movie, when it opens after we get the war, and we come to find out that the military guys in the bunker are still trying to hold protocol, whereas Paul Winfield's character Keegan, who was a guard on the base, he was an artist, so he kind of left the military, and so did Tanner. J. Michael Vincent's character left, but they still let him live in a small building away from the base. They still were able to live there, whereas the rest of the military was holding protocol. But they allude a little bit to the one guy losing it, the guy they were supposed to keep watch over the gas tanks, and there was a leak, and the one guy wanted to leave early, and the other guy was too busy staring at the Playboy model to notice the leak. So, I just thought it was interesting how they allude to the hippies versus these soldiers. They kind of allude to it. It's not a full hippie characters, but
I mean, they're not hippies. They're just they are military, but it gets a little bit hazy after societal breakdown.
Right.
They did have the captain. He's the one who had gone insane, because this is where I think if they were to remake this, they could spend a little bit more time with that story, because they allude to him having gone crazy, and he's just like sitting in that room. It's not until we get the shot from the explosion that breaks out, underground, where you see him briefly in the control room, and you're like, oh God, he's just like sitting there hunched over in his kind of tattered uniform, watching the screens of like nothingness. And then all of a sudden a fire rolls through and sets them alight. That was kind of chilling. But again, my question, this movie is terrible, but it's also great. It's terrible if you ask too many questions. For example, we see Paul Winfield, the painter. He's like decorated the walls and the outside of this bunker where the hell is he going to get all that paint 2 years after the apocalypse? I know he didn't have like the entire art supply store down there.
Yeah. I mean, you get those questions in here, but no, you are right, and maybe that's why I this film just appeals to me so much, because I fully admit it's not a great, it's not a good film, but it's I find it highly entertaining. And watching it again, I knew what was going to happen, and I'm just like, I can't wait for the cockroach sequence. I can't wait for the cockroach. And then you get the cockroach sequence, and I'm like, oh man, this is even better than I remember. Because there's some actual tension there, though. I mean,
Yeah.
with the cockroach sequence, it's like, not only does Keegan, Paul Winfield's character, dies, but you get that where they're trapped in the mall, and they always they keep cutting back close-ups to the foot of, like, I think it's supposed to be of Tanner, and it's got the cockroaches out there trying to gnaw through his shoe, and even before then, you see scenes to where anything that was like organic, not metal, had been devoured. But before we ever see a cockroach, you just see these skeletons of cars and stuff. And I love that buildup.
Yeah, and I think that's where, a remake could bring a bit more sophistication to this, because the skulls they find in the car, they look, like like plastic, Halloween store skulls. But it's creepy because they say the car was locked, and yet everything, all the bodies on the inside, it's not that they decompose. Oh, that's where the reference was, because they talked about they'd been in there for 2 years.
Right. Yep.
But it's not that they had decomposed. It's that the bones had been like bleached clean by something. And it's like this great mystery. And then you realize it's cockroaches. And it starts off, you see a few of them popping up here and there, but then you realize, I don't know if they're sentient or if they can just smell flesh, because all of a sudden they're just like pouring out of everywhere. And when they're in the motorcycle in the mall trying to get away, there's a couple of scenes where they're like skidding over them and taking a turn. And you feel like, oh God, they're like one bad angle away from like landing on the ground and then having these things crawling all over them. It's great. Again, someone please remake this movie. Forget Snow White, remake Damnation Alley.
I mean, I know you found it boring, Joe, but you did find some of the sequences interesting.
That's why I'm kind of torn on it a little bit, is because I feel like there's some really good sequences here. It just, for some reason, it doesn't tie together for me.
Well, what might fit for you, and I hope you folks don't mind me dropping a little bit of trivia here, because I pulled it up on IMDb. Because this film does have a cult following, because there's all kinds of trivia and story behind this one. But apparently George Papard said, if I can find it in here, in Sunburst magazine in 1979, Papard said in retrospect that the film was severely re-edited and cut short. He said he thought they had a very good film. Jack Smite directed it. At that point, it cost $6.5 million. It went to $8 million with technically changing the color of the skies and editing. They totally re-edited the film, the executives at 20th Century Fox, and the film, you see it, if you do see it, if you choose to see it, as he put it, is no longer the film that Jack created. Unfortunately, he did a wonderful job. It was a story of some people who go across America from the New Mexico area to Albany, New York, with one of those futurist things called a landmaster. It's a Trek story, as we call it. The only humanity is what happened between the people and relationships, the sexuality, the attempted murders, and so forth. None of which you will see now. That's out. It's a Trek story about this landmaster now with purple skies. So they re-edited this down to be what it is versus what they actually shot. They spent over $1.5 million to do effects and editing.
There was one sequence where the purple sky was really jarring, like early on in the movie too, and I was like, that looks really unnatural. But you know what? It also just the landmass just reminded me Dead Reckoning. Land of the Dead. George Romero had the Dead Reckoning. So yeah, that's another movie that. And I think even there, wait, was that the one where they were trying to find the radio signal?
Yeah.
So George Romero must have been a big fan of this movie.
But so you have that apparently as well with the scorpions. They actually had fully animatronic scorpions, but they didn't like how they looked, so they went ahead and they composited those scorpions that we get, because apparently they were not happy with the animatronic scorpions.
There's one awkward shot during the scorpion sequence where I guess the scorpions were on like some kind of glass over the film, and you could see like the motorcycle goes right through underneath it. So I'm like, wait a second, is that supposed to be?
There's a similar scene in the junkyard towards the end where there's one shot where there appears to be like a white box in front of Jan Michael Vincent, and you can kind of see his legs through it. Like, what am I watching? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, so it explains it, reading that, what George Papard was saying, what they got versus what they, what they shot, makes me wish I could see that film, because that sounds like it's even more, put together than this one, and maybe it wouldn't feel quite so. That's probably why we have as many montages as we do. If they edited the crap out of this, that's probably why we have the montages that we do. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't mind montages, but they do have quite a bit of them in here. But I love the Landmaster design. I mean, and they stick to it. It's not like it's a TARDIS or anything where it's bigger on the inside, or it's like, Tropic Thunder or whatever, Hulk Hogan's one, where there's the speedboat, and if you go down, there's a whole second level to the speedboat with a full computer, and there's also a jet ski within this regular speedboat. Yeah, bullshit. They really, you could tell Smite, who actually directed a lot of really cool films. He directed
1975, which I really like.
He directed Midway. He directed Airport 1975. He directed Double Indemnity. He directed
the remake of Double Indemnity.
The remake, right? Yeah,
the made-for-TV remake.
No, the remake, but he directed The Illustrated Man in '69. I mean, this guy, you could tell, and some of the stuff I was looking up on, they were really trying to make this film something. Unfortunately, let's once again talk about the year it came out, 1977.
Oh, well, there's no big sci-fi thing that happened in 77 that changed the entire landscape of the genre, Mark. Come on.
That came out from the same studio, though. Same studio, 20th Century Fox did this one. And then you had this little film that they were starting to promote by this guy named George Lucas, who did this college film, THX something or other, and you also had that same year Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This was going to be released during Christmas, and well, guess what was released during Christmas?
Wait, Damnation Alley was going to be a holiday release?
Yeah, it was going to be, the movie was originally planned to be as a Christmas 76 release. It was held up due to production problems because they wanted to add the radioactive sky. So they pushed the release date to 1977, realizing this would conflict with the much anticipated release of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So they pushed it back to October 77 versus December of 77, when they were going to release it in 70. This poor film. I feel so bad for this film because I love for what it is, but reading up more and more about what it could have been.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies that unfortunately, because of the timing of when it came out, it was dated by the time it came out.
Yeah.
Because like one of the on Literary License last year, we did all the Amicus anthology films, and one of the things that we discovered was these movies are coming out in like 73, 74. I'm like, these movies were dated by the time they hit the theater, because you had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Exorcist all hitting theaters at the same time, Black Christmas, and all of a sudden the genre's completely changed, and through no fault of your own, nobody wants to see this movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the same year that this came out, they also released Wizards, the animated film Wizards, which didn't do well. In fact, it was considered double billed at sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think about like with the Landmaster, there's a lot of like James Cameron's Aliens, you know,
Oh yeah.
the military transport. And then I thought about Alien, which came out 2 years after this movie, another Fox film, and how different they look. You know, the
Yeah.
Alien, this looks like a low budget, like backyard project compared to what Ridley Scott did with his film. So I think you're right, Mark. I think if this had come out absent Star Wars Close Encounters, you know, Alien a couple years later, it might have had a chance, but those are such different sci-fi movies. This is more like a sci-fi movie with a touch of the hangover of like the mid 70s disaster movie kind of thrown in.
Yeah, and it precedes the Road Warrior and Mad Max and all
Right.
those, which ended up becoming enormous. So yeah, maybe had it not been opposite these movies, maybe this would have been the trendsetter that the Mad Max movies ended up being 3 years later.
It really does sound like just bad timing for this film, and then the studio execs interfering with what, you know, they thought would make for a better film. Because I'd love to see the edit that Smite made. It's probably a 2-hour film, I would suspect. Because
His movies usually run 2 to 2.5 hours.
So I would suspect it had 2 hours, but you probably had far more character stuff, which they cut out here. Though you do get that wonderful scene. I mean, I do love how it progresses, though. First, they go to Salt Lake, they go to Vegas so they could fuel up. And even there, we see Papard's captain let loose a little as they start, you know, and it was actually a really interesting sequence, even though there should be no way that those things light up because of the EMPs from the nuclear missiles. But we already said they're out here 2 years after Fallout, so it, you know, technicality. But you know, while they're playing, they increase the sound to where it's like the sound of a full casino. Like that's what they're imagining. And I love that secret because it's like here these guys are in the wasteland. They've only known each other for 2 years. The world has pretty much ended as far as they conceive as the world. And here they are, and they're imagining what it was once just by playing the slots.
And you know what that reminds me of?
The
shopping scenes in Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to Romero, who I'm now convinced is a huge fan of this movie.
I wouldn't doubt it. And that's the thing is, if you look at this film, while it itself was a flop and it just has a cult following, you look at this, and as Ian, you started at the beginning of this film, at the beginning of our discussion, you see so much that came out later from that feels similar to this film that you hadn't seen before this film. I mean, if this film, I think, comes out 2 years earlier or even a year or two later, I think it might be something. But it definitely, the Landmaster definitely, when I first saw Aliens, I'm like, oh, that's like a modified Landmaster.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird to think because it might have been something, you know, it come out earlier or later, Mark. But I think just in terms of, you want to think about it as like cinematic destiny, what if it had come out at a different time? All the movies that came out of it or after it that we're assuming were influenced by it, maybe they never would have.
Yeah, that's true.
Or it would have been too big to rip off because people are like, oh, you're just ripping off Damnation Alley. No one wants to see that.
I mean, but then you look at the 80s and how many ripoffs there were of Mad Max and the Terminator and all that stuff. So,
well, but no, I'm talking like the specific things that we're talking about here that showed up in that they're oddly specific in other movies. It's not generic like, oh, it's a guy walking across the wasteland. It's
War
things
Games,
like,
especially, dude. That opening scene, I was like, whoa.
And what's great is that they're similar, but they're also different enough because the way that the War Games scene ended was really intense with, you know, turn your key, sir. Whereas in this one, they're in unison. They're making the hard decision, but they don't hesitate. But we also see not only from those two actors, but also the people in the big control room when they realize that this has actually happened. They're low key freaking out. It's I think that's the most chilling part to me, is just like seeing the people who are in control of all this stuff. They're not like breaking down and crying or anything, but they're like putting their heads in their hands, like, man, this the world just ended and we were here to watch it.
It's not only it's cold, it's literally handled like it would be in real life as far as military. When we get our two quote unquote stars, our heroes, being the guys who turned the key to help launch the counter, missiles, the way you go about it, if you check it out, this has, and I've got to find the soundtrack on vinyl. I got to Jerry Goldsmith, but they don't have music during the missile part. They have them just turning their key, and you just have the beeping of the machines and the flipping of the switch sounds, but you don't have soundtrack during the missile part for most of it. It's just the sounds of them going about their business, launching the counter. And it's just, there's something chilling about it. And I'm like, in this little cult sci-fi film, you get these moments like this, or you get no soundtrack again when they encounter the rednecks. There's no music.
Yeah, and the redneck scene, that reminds me of, there's a lot of Walking Dead in there. I know that's not a post-apocalyptic, that's not like a nuclear holocaust movie, but we've
Still
seen a lot of
post-apocalyptic,
those, society breaks down and you've got like these factions and you've got a bunch of kind of good old boys looking for women.
Although, mad props, I love it. It makes me laugh every time. So we've got our redneck folks, okay? We've got, at this point, we've picked up our kid, our Janice or whatever is with them. Our two heroes are looking to get fuel in a generator. We run across the rednecks. Rednecks want them to show them the vehicle, the the Landmaster. So while they're out there, the one redneck tries to do something not pleasant, but they hear gunshots, and so they take out the rednecks, and so there's like only one redneck left in the building. Okay, Janice bolts after she takes a few shots at the one redneck. The kid is gone. They don't bother like going in there and finding the redneck. They flip on the switch for the missile launcher, and they just razz the entire building. They just raise the entire building. He doesn't fuck around.
It's great.
That really dark line too. He's not doing anything the rest of us aren't going to do. He's just doing it in the wrong order.
Oh God, yeah.
That was wonderful. I mean, not great, but it was
a
a
great
line.
But a very dark line.
It was a very effective, and that's the thing is what you were saying, Joe. And after reading about how they mentioned the studio cut it up, makes me want to see because there are so many of those like moments in this film that you're just like, that's effective, or that's chilling, or damn, and then we go to montage.
Well, it's funny because when they find Jackie Earl Haley's character, he's out in the desert, like hanging out inside a shack, and they pull up on him. And it's very funny because Jan Michael Vincent gets out of the turret and he's like, "Hey, kid, we don't want to hurt you." And so Jackie Earl Haley picks up this giant rock and he throws it and it hits Jan Michael Vincent like square in the chest. And he's like, "Ow." He's like, "Hey, kid, don't do that again. We're here to help." And he picks up another rock and throws it at him and hits him in the exact same spot again. And it just makes me wonder, because Bad News Bears came out before this, talking about our alternate movie history. What if that kid is actually Kelly Leak and he survived the apocalypse? That's why he's so good at throwing that baseball.
I'd be down with that.
I mean, you do set it up because that's how he takes out the redneck too.
Yeah.
The redneck that's assaulting Janice.
And I love it because I thought, okay, maybe beamed him and he's gonna get up later, like ow, I'm bleeding. Where'd that kid go? But no, he's fucking dead.
Well, he took a big enough rock. He just tosses it. He clocks that guy with that rock to protect, and yeah. And again, that's where they're not traveling and you're not getting the road show. You're getting these pockets of scenes. They're all really, I think, well crafted for a movie like this, whether it's the cockroach scene or Vegas, or where they catch the kid, Jackie Earle Haley's character, or the rednecks. Each one of those sequences, hell, even when they go later into the junkyard, they managed to work in that, yeah, this is the Landmaster. This thing's really cool. This thing's getting beat up on the road because they're driving it and you hear a grinding gear and they've got to go to the junkyard to get parts. And they even do that scene as kind of a tension-filled scene because you got the kid always going, hey, did you guys hear that? Did you hear, And yeah, I mean, the ending though, no, I fully admit it's ridiculous. That's got to be a studio interference, and something tells me they set it up differently than what we end up getting in the movie. Don't get me wrong. No, I mean, being the child of the 80s, we know exactly with the effects of nuclear war, but it's like, yeah, so the Earth went back on its regular axis. That's fine. The skies are blue again, everything. It doesn't mean that, Albany, New York, which I always thought when I was a kid, it was Canada. I always thought they went to Canada, and Canada ended up being less of a wasteland than the rest of America, because that's just how my mind wanted to think of, something. But the fact now, paying attention that it's Albany, New York, are like, yeah, no, just because the Earth righted its axis doesn't mean that, sky's blue and oh yeah, we got horses. Shit.
There's that classic dumb guy logic in this movie too. So what do we have to do? Like set off more bombs to tilt the Earth back the right way? Classic dumb guy logic.
Well,
I mean, it stands to reason. You get clunked on the head and become really smart, or really dumb. You get clunked on the head again, it reverses. It makes sense. It's movie.
It's literally cousin Eddie's logic from National Christmas Vacation.
Her eyes aren't crossed anymore. Yeah, She gets kicked by a mule, her eyes go cross. She gets dropped on her head, they go back to normal. Who would have known?
The only thing that would have salvaged this ending and made it perfect and tied in with thematically is if the guy and the kid drive off the motorcycle, they go to the town, and the town is full of mutant frog people. Cut to black.
Oh, so you know what? Hell Comes to Frogtown. Do not watch any of those sequels. Just telling you that now. I wanted to tell you guys that last week.
No, we wouldn't. I wasn't planning on it. I've heard horror stories.
My copy of Frogtown 2 is actually Robert Zadar's personal copy.
Really?
Yeah, he gave it to me to rip it digitally for him a couple months before he passed away.
Oh,
I never got a chance to give it back to him.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. You still got a piece of that, though.
It's something I can hold on to from our friendship. Yeah,
that's very cool. Robert Zadar was very cool. And yeah, I mean, this film, the performances even in this aren't bad, really. I mean, George Papard's captain is what you want. I like the performances in here too of the people. I mean, they're not stretching their acting chops by any means. I mean, this is a role that we've seen Papard in the past.
And in the future, and I watched this is funny. I watched the version hosted by Joe Bob Briggs. Somebody had taken the movie uncut and put in all of his break-ins from Monster Vision. And he goes over the military history of George Papard. Starts out as a private in his first movie. He gets promoted to colonel in his next movie. By this movie, he's a captain. And he just kept going on and on. I was like, oh, this is great. Because I don't think I've ever seen George Papard in a non-military role.
Even in the A-Team, he's retired, or
Yeah, he's a retired military guy.
Even in Battle Beyond the Stars, he's part of the Air Forces. I think if I remember correctly, he's part of the astronaut, but he's part of the Air Force and the it is missile, which, by the way, folks, if you have it one day, I will work it into where we will talk about Battle Beyond the Stars, because that's another one that's just a near and dear to my heart. That's just a sci-fi retelling of the Seven Samurai. Like literally, like it's a retelling of the Seven Samurai in space is all what Battle Beyond the Stars, huh?
I'm sure you can find a place to slot it in.
Oh yeah, I will. I've got the steel book of it, so it was on the cheap. But that's got George Papard in it as well. He's go figure, a Southern boy flying a U.S. rocket. Have either of you seen Battle Beyond the Stars?
No, I've never seen it.
Okay,
neither of us have seen it, so there you go. Now you have to put it on here.
Now I gotta work it in somewhere. I'll find.
You can probably find one place this year where you can.
I will look at what I got this year, and we'll
probably pull something out, slip that in its place.
We'll figure it out.
I'm sure you've got a 1975 sci-fi movie in there somewhere, and you can pair this in with that.
We'll work it out. But as far as Damnation Alley goes, Joe, would you recommend it for folks who maybe are looking for wasteland films?
That's the thing. I maybe I'm just used to my my post-apocalyptic movies being more on the sleazy end. I mean, I am Italian after all, and in the 80s we made post-apocalyptic movies like every 12 hours, it seems. So maybe that's why I was like,
yeah, you basically took the spaghetti western script and goes, okay, Wasteland. There you go.
That's basically what a lot of them were.
Yeah, that's what they are.
They're cop movies, they're westerns, they're post-apocalyptic movies. I think they all basically had the same basic script. If you ever hear the story of how a lot of these movies got funded, basically what would happen is the producers would go to MeFed or go to the Cannes Market or something like that. They would have a poster, and people would come up to them and be like, "Oh, that movie looks interesting. I might be able to sell that in my territory." They'd be like, "Hey, Paolo, get started on the Western script." So
the canon approach of making this film,
very much, yeah. Someone said they're going to give us $200,000 for the zombie movie.
Where you literally
Kraken.
Where you literally have Charles Bronson going, "Wait, I'm going to be in what movie? Wait, what?"
God bless Sergio Martino, Lucio Fulci, and all those guys who just kind of hung around waiting on the other end of the phone going, "Wait, which one are they paying us for?" All right.
Yeah. That Western, well, sci-fi's in now. Can you spin it to be post-apocalyptic?
Yep. Yeah, you just get Ernesto Gastaldi just looking through a filing cabinet going, "I got the script right here." I could do that because I'm Italian.
What about you?
I think talking to you guys, I think I like it a little more now, but because it is batshit insane. Maybe it's just one of those things where like it took me a little while to process it.
Well, you literally finished it before the show, so
yeah. I texted you like, "Hey, I have 8 minutes left. I'll be right there."
It takes a little while to chew on it. Like I said, I watched it. I've watched it many times since I was a kid. I just adored it. Namely, when I watched it as a kid, because it had, oh, hey, look, it's Hannibal from A-Team in it. And, oh, look, it's it's J. Michael Vincent from Airwolf. Oh, he's in this too. Cool. And, oh, it's got a cool vehicle. And then I just wait for the man-eating cockroach scene. And I love that. And, and then watching it later on as I was older, I'm like, yeah, it's got a sweet spot in my heart. I'm like, no, it's cheesy. It's poorly edited, but there's some charm here underneath.
Yeah, nobody loves DC Cab 40 years later.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of the same elements.
Yeah.
I haven't seen DC Cab in a long time.
Man, it's been a while. It's been a while to see DC Cab. That and Dr. Detroit. I haven't seen Dr. Detroit.
I've never seen Dr. Detroit.
You're not missing much. I revisited that like a few years ago. I think Shout Factory put it out, and I was like, "Oh, I'll check this." Oh, Jesus.
What about you, Ian? This was first view for you. What about Damnation Alley? Would you recommend it, say, over Steel Dawn?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, I think Steel Dawn was the other movie that you missed, Joe, because
Yeah, it was.
you're like last week was Frogtown, the week before it was whatever, and I had forgotten about Steel Dawn, and it was only been like 2 weeks. So yeah, Damnation Alley gets probably my highest recommendation. I think that and A Boy and His Dog are the winners for this month, because they're unique movies. They are dated, but again, that's one of those things where if you can imagine someone remaking this stuff today with a little bit more polish, a little bit more patience, and maybe even breaking into that script that we apparently didn't get to see on film because of the edits, I think it could be really something special, especially nowadays. We've got renewed fears over the threat of like global conflict and nuclear war. I mean, you can really make a movie that freaks people out and gives them like an adventure that's also very hopeful. Like at the end, you realize that these characters really have gotten to know each other and kind of trust each other and love each other because they've been through a lot. And it's not like a grim, like terribly bleak version of the future. It ends on a very hopeful note, even though the ending is complete bullshit because none of those people had been out there raising horses. I admire its spirit. Yeah, so definitely check it out. Mark, I got to ask you, are you wearing your Nightmare on Elm Street t-shirt as some kind of an homage to Jackie Earle Haley? Because if so, I find it distasteful, frankly.
No, it's just a shirt that I grabbed. That I just grabbed. So
I am wearing my Frankenstein shirt because Jack Smite made Frankenstein the True Story, though.
Well, there you go.
That was just random too.
Yeah,
but
it just worked out that way.
Fun bit trivia.
I do want to point that out. If you ever want to see a good, I mean, it's not a great movie, but I really like Frankenstein the True Story. I shouldn't say it's not a great movie because I do think it's a great movie. I think it's the closest we've ever gotten to the novel itself on film. So if you ever want to see a truly good retelling, Jack Smite, who directed this movie, directed Frankenstein the True Story. It's like 3 hours long, so pack a lunch. It's a long one.
Pack a lunch.
It's a long one.
Damn. All right. But yeah, definitely seek this movie out. I'm curious to see what extras are on the Blu-ray, if there's like commentaries or anything like that. But yeah, I want to learn more about this, and I would love to get someone out there, I'm sure, has put a model together of the Landmaster. I think that'd be really cool. And whoever bought it for their personal collection, if they're restoring it to like put in like a film museum or something, I would make a pilgrimage to go out there and see that, because that thing is amazing.
It is amazing, and I adore this film mainly because, like I said, maybe I watched it at that impressionable age. I'm not sure, but I find a lot of charm and fun in this film. It's, as far as like serious film or whatnot, no, not by any means. But when you realize when this came out and what came after it, it's hard not to, as we've said tonight, it's hard not to think that this influenced or at least gave some ideas to later filmmakers who would watch this film and go, oh, we could do that, better, but that's a pretty cool idea. And that's what this film does. It's got a lot of really cool ideas. Yes, it's dated, but even still, the Landmaster being practical and the fact that they built that damn thing, it's impressive and it makes a difference. If it wasn't, in all honesty, if it wasn't for the changes that the studio made, as in composited scorpions and the weird sky, this film would age a lot better than it does, I think, in all honesty.
Oh yeah, one thing we didn't really talk about is early on when you've got the two Landmasters, they drive into a sandstorm that's multiple tornadoes, which we would end up seeing later in Mad Max Fury Road. Much better special effects, but again, you can imagine like the 77 version, you can almost, while you're watching it, picture what it would look like with better effects and how cool that would be. So again, I'm advocating for this one.
And that was another tension-filled moment. Like I said, these scenes where they have to stop have tension in them. That the tornado scene where the second the second quote unquote landmaster ends up getting rolled, and we have the one guy gets his neck broke because he's rolling around in the. I'm like, it's again, no music. You've got Paul Winfield in there who gets injured. His character gets injured, and the other guy dies. Like, and you're like, and you get the outside scene later. You see, there's a boulder on top of the fucking thing.
Yeah, he has to get his attention by shooting a missile right out in front of the first one, because it's like, oh wait, where are you? Oh, you're back there.
But that scene with the storm was tension because they cut away you just have the sound of the wind. You've got Tanner trying to drive the landmaster through the storm. You've got the other guys who tried to dig in, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great sequences put together, and learning what we did tonight makes me wish I could see the full cut that wasn't studio messed with, because I think maybe there's even some more of those moments in here, but it is what it is. I would have recommended it as well, even if I didn't adore this film. I think as far as 70s films go that aren't Star Wars, 70s films that are sci-fi, it's not a bad film. I think there's a lot of fun charm in it, and intense moments, and just stuff you want from a film like this. And you can see where it had to have influenced stuff later on that did it just a bit better. So thank you tonight, folks. That's the end of our Wasteland Wander'n. We're going next month a completely opposite end of the bell curve. Here we've been futuristic and post-apocalyptic. Next month, we're going old school, swords and sorcery, Merlin and King Arthur, as it's round table month. So hope you come back and check that out. Now, as always, this is where I give my wonderful crew members their license to shill. So go ahead, Joe. What do you got to shill, if anything?
Before I shill anything, a couple weeks ago, as you guys know, I came over here from the Literary License Podcast. We'd gone on hiatus. Keith Chago, who founded the podcast, passed away in a car accident. And I wanted to at least say something to pay homage to him, because if he hadn't invited me onto his podcast, I probably wouldn't be doing this now. So cheers to Keith. We had a great run. I was on with him for 7 years. So yeah, just wanted to, God, I'm starting to cry already. But yeah, just want to say a few words about him before I moved on and shilled anything else. So regain my composure real quick. That being said, Literary License and Spoiler Room are both nominated for Rondo Awards. So yeah, if you guys can go to rondoaward.com, and unfortunately it's not one of those things where you can just click. You got to send them an email. But everybody who's listening, if you could, give us your vote, it would definitely help us out a lot. And one last thing, this Thursday, it's not open to the public; it's only open to students. But I'm going to be speaking to a film class, I guess, at the University of Illinois in Champaign. There's going to be a table read of my latest screenplay, which I co-wrote with Jason McLeod. There's going to be a Q&A and stuff afterwards. So I know it's being filmed. If it is filmed, and they do release it to the public, I will definitely let everyone here know how they can see it. Besides that, that's it. That's it for now, at least. And next week we're going to have a new Joe Bob episode that I worked on. But yeah, that's my show for this week.
Well, thank you, sir. My condolences to you. And yeah, Literary License Podcast was a lot of fun. They were kind enough to have me on a few times. It's where we talked in that. And yeah, it was a really good podcast. So mad props and, shout out. And yeah, to our fellow podcasters. It's a really good show. It's still out there. So check it out. Thanks, Joe. And yeah, Ian. What do you got?
All right.
How do you follow that?
No. It's. I mean, that was a really nice tribute.
It was.
Joe, so thank you for that. I'm excited for you to hear about your adventures in Champaign. So that's great. That's
yeah,
where,
I'm really looking forward to this. I hope I hope that video comes out pretty quickly so I can share it with you guys. I'm really hoping this goes well, and we'll see. Maybe it's a new chapter opening up for me.
All right. Well, I am Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. I'm also here on YouTube, do movie reviews and live streams and stuff. And on Wednesday, the 2nd of April, we're going to be talking about the movie Companion, which came out a couple months ago. And that'll be 8 p.m. Central. Very excited to talk about that one. And what else is going on? I don't know. Lots of stuff. Check me out there. Check me out here every Monday, hanging out with Mark and Joe, talking about movies. All right. That's it.
Well, I appreciate you, both of you, and appreciate all the folks who tuned in tonight to our live stream and those who tune in later to our podcast channel, specialmarkproduction.com for all your Movie Man needs. Yes, if you are on the YouTube, we are wrapping up Review-a-Palooza, where I've reviewed nearly all the films so far at this point that I saw at the Midwest Weird Fest and A Night of Horror International Film Festival at the beginning of March. I've dropped, 4, 8, 10, I'll have 12 reviews dropped by the time I'm done within the last 5 days. So check that out. Check out the interviews I did with the filmmakers that I managed to grab while I was at the fest. Also, another interview, Bears on a Ship, since we're talking about interesting films, comes out next month in California. It's having its premiere, but I got a chance to talk to the director and some of the cast of Bears on a Ship. You can find that right here on the YouTube channel. So don't forget to like and subscribe and bells and whistles and all that. Vote for us on Rondo. And that's it, folks. So thank you so much. And until next time, we'll just say good night, everyone.
Good night.